Om Mano Nabudhi Shariram Indriyam Tanmatram Bhutani Nabuta Panchakam Aham Kritas Chopi Vyatsurupakam Tamisham Atmanam Upuiti Shashvatam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That one most desirous of ultimate freedom dissolves the mind, the gross elements, the subtle elements called tanmatras, the subtle senses of knowledge and the gross senses of action, the intellect, along with the ego, into the word. Then that one dissolves the word into the Atman, the self in all. Then that one finds the Atman within Brahman and dissolves it there. For Brahman is the soul in all things and all beings. In that way, does that practitioner of blissful dissolution enjoy eternal peace and ecstatic bliss. Om, peace, peace, peace. And there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us. May that Brahman sustain us. May that very Brahman illumine our thinking process and reveal to us the essence of the teachings. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you for joining us here for a third class on the subject of the Yogachudamani Upanishad. We intend to finish up those slokas today, which will entail us doing a bit of coursing ahead, reading some of the slokas early. And so I'll try and forego as much of my introductory review as I can, because I've already reviewed the slokas from early Upanishad last week. So this third class will be a coursing on into some of the depths of the teachings. And to get right to it, actually, we can look at our main chart here and see across the chudamani. That's a crown, right? And so these are the crown jewels of yoga, according to who? The rishis of the Upanishads. So it casts a much more powerful and, I might say, non-dual light upon yoga. Atmic testament upon yoga is how I've named one of my books. When the Vedantists get together and study the Yoga Sutras, like Vedvyas did for Patanjali Sutras some hundreds of years later, when he took incarnation as Shankar's teacher. Govindapada, his name was. So Patanjali had a more recent incarnation than when he reformatted and composed the 8-limb yoga than we usually know about. So whatever the case may be, those jewels of the Chudamani are listed across the top of this chart, which we get to see for a second week in a row. And you can see them being all of those beautiful qualities, attributes, if you could even call them that. And the Upanishad has already traced prana, mantra. Remember, mantra was Ajapa in this case. And we all had powerful teachings, and I've had some really good feedback, both at Satsang and at Brahman Bites and God blogs, and in email from people who were really in wonderment about the Ajapa mantra, that it was taught in an Upanishad, for one thing, and where else would you find it? Because it's such a most subtle kind of mantra. It's non-mantra is what it is, Ajapa. So it's just the purity of breathing and becoming aware of Prana, which, by the way, is the activator, animator of the whole universe. It animates the physics part. That is, there is a physical kind of prana that flows through everything. That, as I was saying last week, you raise the arm through which the eyes see. And so that's the connected inward to the psychic prana, and the psychic prana is connected further inward to the one whom we're worshiping today, Shakti. Yes, today is the 4th day of Navaratri. The goddess is Kushmanda. So we had these goddesses worshipped Shailaputri the first day, Brahmacharini the second day. Yesterday was Brahmacharini, and today is Kushmanda. So that's 4 days. Of course, we're in the West, so we're a day behind India. They're worshiping the fifth goddess. A kind of a good teaching about the one moment, eternal moment of time. No matter where you are, there's always eternally or absolutely that one moment. But then we'll go on and look at Skandamata tomorrow, and that's when we think about children and motherhood. Skandamata is the mother of all children. Katyayani after that, which is power, and then Kalaratri after that, goddess of courage. Mahagauri is the penultimate or 8th goddess of the 9 Navadurgas, they're called, and she's the goddess of beauty, particularly in female form. And then Siddhidatri, a goddess of, I like to say goddess of perfection. Sometimes you look at some of the renderings of the 9 Durgas. Of course, if you look in the Agamas, they're entirely different names, 9 different names. So this is more like the conventional view of modern Hinduism as to which the 9 goddesses are today. So sometimes they call Siddhidatri. Datri is, it's like to hold. Siddhi would be perfection, but it also means power. So sometimes they'll say goddess of powers, but I don't prefer that. I prefer the goddess of perfection. By the time you've reached the 9th Durga, you've dissolved all form back into the formless from which it came. So they build the goddess out of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. This lends the 5 elements even more power, doesn't it? And more willingness on our part to actually meditate on the 5 elements as something other than just physical, like the physical universe, something that belongs more to the microcosm than just the macrocosm. So the macrocosm is concentrated on the outer universe, and the microcosm is the mind, basically, everything it holds in it, which is inclusive of the macrocosm. We'll look at that today on the 3 AUM, how meanings of that, different meanings of the Pranava or the word Om. Pranava is coming up there with Brahman, right? We looked a little bit at both of those last time. But back to the 9 Durgas then, that goddess of perfection. They raise her right out of the clay, make her out of all of the elements of earth. Then they offer sacred water to her. Then they do homa, fire ceremony in front of her. Then they fan her, that's air. And then pretty soon you're to ether. You're worshiping her as space itself. And then after that, you're dressing her and you're feeding her. The monks will actually go up to what we would think of as just a statue, but what they call a murti, or a divine image, and put food up to her mouth. And so, after they've painted her with vermilion paint and so forth, she looks very beautiful. They put jewelry on her. Like I said, I've been there for a couple times in India at the Ramakrishna Mission and Mott in Belur, watching this happen over these 9 days. And basically it said, Saptami, why is it so pronounced in the 9 days, the 7th day? It's basically, that's when the whole thing is done. The 8th day, you'll meditate on her. And the 9th day, you'll meditate on her as completeness. And then in the 9th day, you'll dissolve her back into the sacred river. Helter-skelter, just no ceremony with that. They pick her up and douse her in the river. She goes swimming and she dissolves back into the river. So Doesn't this remind you of from formlessness, everything rises, and then it takes form, and then it goes back to formlessness? Who said that best? Sri Ramakrishna in this day and age said, it is, I'm quoting him from the gospel, it is my most mature opinion that we come from the Nitya, that's the eternal formlessness, and then we enter into the Leela, that's the play on the fields of the Lord in a form. And then we're done with the play, we dissolve ourselves back into the Nitya. From the Nitya to the Leela, back to the Nitya is how he describes this. All of us are like that. Where was I before I was born? Where was I before I thought I was this body? Was I nothing? Or is the soul exist or not? Seems to me right now that I can detect that soul. And if you look at the 9 Durgas and meditate upon them, then you will pretty soon be granted that special knowledge that she gives, in which, through the mantra, Mantranam Jiva Bhuta Tulya Smrita Shakti Rupaya. We heard that chanted last week from the Tantras. And other beautiful slokas on the mantra, how the special knowledge of the mantra is given by knowledge of the mother, who, and the efficacy of the mantra is that it shows that the universe is nothing other than Brahman, that the universe and Brahman are undivided, one thing. So it would seem so as you create her out of earth and worship her with water, fire, air, and so forth, perfect her as an image in form, and then sit and meditate on the 8th day in front of her, and then on the 9th day, Nava, Ratri, the 9th night. By then she's dissolved back into the river. So it's a very beautiful ceremony, ritual, enactment of divinity on earth, how you want to call that. So involved too. So those 9 Durgas, we're in the 4th here in America today, in the United States, worshiping Kushmanda, which really means goddess of the cosmic egg. You see? So basically, the Hiranyagarbha, or she's the goddess of the entire egg out of which everything comes. Like that Om we're going to talk about today. And yesterday, although there was talk about Chandra, Moon, and Ganta, Bell, really there was also a demon that was named that. And Durga destroyed that demon. So she became known as Chandraganta, and probably destroyed it with the sound of her bell, because whenever she rings her bell, all the demons on the battlefield, can't stand it and they run away. So that's the power of her Ganta, her bell. So all of this, again, rich symbology that we talked about yesterday at Satsang and God Log Sum. So with that as our foundation today, because after our class here, all of us present here at the Kedarnath ashram, we call it here, will enter into worship of Sri Durga and do our worship and eat prasad food afterwards. Aren't we lucky? So this chart then, I stopped there to dwell on just a few things that we talk about, that prana, that mantra, and those channels through which our awakened consciousness will flow, called nadis. If you think you're the body, then those are physical. And you think about blood, you think about energy, that I don't have any or I have better, or you think about disease, illness comes upon you, and pretty soon stents in arteries, and things like that when your heart wears out. So you're thinking about a physical form that has physical nadis, but inside of those physical nadis, there are hundreds and thousands of subtle channels. And we've talked about that in terms of then Kundalini herself, where these 7 chakras became known to us. The 3 lower worlds, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, famous for the Gayatri mantra. And then the Anahata, Vishuddha, Agya, and Sahasrara, which Sri Ramakrishna has brought back into knowledge in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, taken down by Master Mahashaya, known as M, and related to us. So those nadis are important. The chakras just mentioned, and then we reach the pinnacle of the crown, you might say, which is Brahman itself, and the Pranava Om. Let's, without making any more comment on that, let me then go ahead and start us into the rest of these slokas. As if you remember right, then we made it as far as about 72 slokas. I'm going to reread 72. It's part B of 72. 72 is actually a kind of a two-part sloka, part 1 and B, 1 and 2. So this will start us into some teachings about Brahman and Om, but here being called the Pranava. You can see how similar it is to the word prana, Pranava. So how important the prana is to the Pranava, if you want to talk about that. I'd say probably one of the easiest ways to begin on the spiritual path is to begin to think about the word, the meaning of words, the vibration in words, the intelligence in words, and finally the goddess of the word. Then one will, become aware of the breathing process, Ajapa. Maybe the real mantra going on there. Maybe people aren't quite aware of that until someone says, "You're going to do pranayam now because you're my student." Some yoga teacher says to his disciple, and so they start breathing. But at that time, they're not aware of or made aware of Ajapa either. They're thinking about mantra, practice, words. So all of this is culminating towards an inward peak. That's the word I'm borrowing out of here. Om is that peak of Brahman. That's indescribable by words and too brilliant to gaze upon with the naked eye. You'd have to have a single eye to see that properly. So we read 72.1, which had to do with the very first saying was Brahman is Om. Brahman, it's like saying in the beginning was the word was God. There it is, right? God is the word. And the word was God, and the word was with God. So those are like three different levels of philosophy, looking at the unity. That's why I just chanted Mano, Nabudhi, Sharuram, Indriyam, Tanmatram, Bhutani, Nabhuta Panchakam. All of those are the 5 sets of 24 cosmic principles, nicely put together by Shankara and the Yogachudamani. And he's saying, you dissolve these. You dissolve all of these back, along with the ego. He said, Aham kritas japi. Don't forget to make sure the ego goes with them. Dissolves them all back into the word, right? The pranava. And then dissolve that. Find that word inside of you. That you doesn't mean your ego, which you just dissolved. It means the Atman, the true you. Will the true you stand up? Will the true Atman stand forward? So it exists. It's pure. It's full of wisdom. It doesn't have any drawbacks. Doesn't have any stains. Cannot be described, although we do our best to try. It's beyond beginnings, middles, and ends. So I would, and I have changed that. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That only pertains to the beginnings of cycles and the ending of cycles. If it wants to pertain to the Advaita, it has to say, before the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Then you give it the Advaitic turn, that the Word never stops sounding itself. It's always sounding. And souls come in contact with it, then as the Upanishad says, they see the worlds and they desire them. And at that time, the Om is downward facing, that is outward facing. But the wise soon see through the mirage of what is projected by vibration, called superimposition, and they begin to turn the outward back inward and upward. So the wise turn the Atman facing upward. those who are full of desire for the worlds and for things, for resources and pleasures and objects. The Atman, the Om is facing downward, it says. Very nice analogy for the Pranava. All right, so all of that was a review of 72.1. There's more there, but let's go on. Here's what we are starting to look at today with Brahman and Pranava. Among Devas, Brahma rose first. Notice there's no N at the end of that word. Brahman is different than Lord Brahma. Brahman is the absolute formless reality and timeless, spaceless, without boundaries. Brahma came out of that, came out of the Om of that. It says Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva come out of Om. Brahma comes out of the A, Vishnu comes out of the U, and Shiva comes out of the M. And when their lifetime of thousands and thousands and thousands of years are over, they'll turn and merge back into A, U, and M. So that's how the Trinity appears to us out of the word and then disappears back into the word. So among Devas, that's this great Trinity. Brahma arose first, Lord Brahma. Sometimes Creator God, we like to say the one who projects the macrocosm from the microcosm. Among those who arose first, Brahma became the creator, Vishnu, the one who upkeeps or sustains, and Lord Rudra, the destroyer. Rudra is the name for Shiva. So Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are starting to talk about the Trinity. Like we choose to sing. Jaya Shiva Omkara, Bhaja Shiva Omkara, Brahma Vishnu Sada Shiva, Hara Hara Mahadeva, Hara Hara Mahadeva. Sing it with me if you know it. Jaya Shiva Omkara, Bhaja Shiva Omkara, Brahma Vishnu Sada Shiva, Hara Hara Mahadeva, Hara Hara Mahadeva. A little bit nicer to hear it sung than to hear it read, isn't it? It brings a lot more warmth into the fact that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are as close to our heart as possible. They're just so beloved by beings. Everyone likes creation. Everyone likes preservation. Well, destruction. How about if you're suffering in a body, and then the destructive force comes along and says, "I will free you." So you can have another creation again if you want. So that's what the beauty of destruction, or we like to call it dissolution, because the Atman's never born. It never actually lives because it's never died, and it never dies. So that's that. I could sing that too. Mature, Najati Veda. I have no birth because I have no death because I was never born, Shankara sings. So that's this Trinity, to put an accent on that. And it goes on here. Among them, from Brahma arose worlds, devas, men, and those worlds in between them, all the beings. So Brahma projects all of those. In the case of men, the body is the unified form of the Pancha Mahabhutas, the five great elements. The organs of wisdom, the Gyanendriyas, arose in men. The organs of action, the Karmendriyas, you know all of these, I'm sure. Seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling. And then action, procreation, evacuation, so forth. All of those are the 10 different sense organs. Some of them are called actions, senses, like what's animated and moves, and some of them are called knowledge senses. That is, our senses should be connected inside to this great Mahashakti through Kundalini, and then we wouldn't use the senses just for pleasure and sense objects, which defeats the purpose. makes us attached, causes us to suffer, and so forth. So right there, he's talking about in the case of men. He also says there are the 5 body airs: Prana, Apana, Samana, Udana. So we've looked at those 5 pranas, and are taught by the macro portions of the mind. Intellect, decision-making power, and feeling the self are also called macro, stula shariram, they're called. The organs of wisdom, the organs of action, things related to wisdom, and the 5 elements and the micro aspect of the mind and intellect are called linga sharira. So you have the stula sharira, the gross body, everything out here. And then you have the sukshma sharira of the micro kind, that they're calling at macrocosm, microcosm. One comes out of the other. So everything comes out of the mind, just like in dreams tonight. You dream something, oh, there it is, in the flesh, in the dirt, in the earth, including Ma Durga. Boy, they made her overnight. See, there she is. She wasn't there before. What's that tell you? So back, everything gets dissolved back in, and then to deep sleep and Turiya, and then comes back out again. That can all happen to you in 24 hours, and does over many, many days, many, many moons, as they say. American Indians say, oh, I've lived many moons, so somebody must be watching what's going on up there. Of course, then you have to watch what's going on in here, because all of this relates to the microcosm. Is not out there. The macrocosm's out there. The microcosm and what animates is inside of you. Kings of heaven are within you. Therefore, and then that's called, did I say that's called linga sharira? That's like, the 3rd body. If you want to put nice English words to that, it's gross, subtle, and causal. That's what we use. But it's good to know the Sanskrit because it goes a little deeper. So we have a gross body, we have a subtle body, and we have a causal body, but a deep sleep body. So there was a God blog put out about that, is when I titled it, I'm not the body, but I have 3 of them. And so to get people to know that, they're none of the bodies. They're the Atman, which is bodiless, but they do have access to 3 different levels, 3 different bodies. You might call it a deep sleep body, a dream body, and a physical body if you want to correlate with the teachings. Therefore, this sloka concludes, the body has 3 types of properties. All people have 3 bodies. And there are 4 states of the body: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and Turiya. Turiya is beyond the causal body. The exalted spiritual state, he says here. Those Purushas, that's the Atman, who reside in our body and control these states are called Vishva. And Pragya, Taijasa and Pragya. Vishva, Taijasa and Pragya, and Atman. Atman would be the Turiya. Vishva will always have macro experiences. Different from that is Taijasa, who has micro experiences. Pragya has pleasant experiences, deep sleep. Atma is a witness of all of these 3. Very nicely put by this Upanishad. So first he classes all the 24 cosmic principles into the 3 bodies, connects them to the 3 mantras of Om, connects those to the 4 states of our consciousness that are attached to them, and then gives them names, and finally shows their functions. So let's look at this chart then, because it's been hanging around showing itself for a couple of weeks, and we can look at it now. And it gets some Upanishadic explanation of what's going on there. You see the meditator in the middle. And much like this, the Upanishads all have they don't disagree on it, but they do make the two designations um, um, pertaining to the eye and the forehead and the heart, or sometimes the neck. I think when they point to the forehead, sometimes they'll point to the heart as if mind and heart are the same thing. I've often said that you can't go here in the anatomical heart and find the Atman, nor can you find the mind there, but you can find both of them in the thinking mind, in the wise mind. So that's one, don't get confused about that. But here you can see that an explanation of what's called the three avastas, realms of existence. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are assigned across the top to A, U, and M of Om. Remember, that's the Pranava we're looking at, right, on this chart. So here's the master, Advaita Gaudapada, his explanation of a lot of this. Good that it not only did a Vedantist had a look at yoga, but an Advaita Vedantist had to look at both of them. So that's what we have when we look at Patanjali, Vedavyas, and Gaudapada. So here's what Gaudapada says about that. Jagrat, waking, his quote is, waking is for those who mistake matter for reality. He's not kind. He's direct, straightforward about it. How can he not be when everyone has forgotten their Atman and they don't even know that heaven is within them, that dreaming is heaven? They're still looking outside. Even religions are still saying things like, don't fire any nukes up there, you're going to destroy the castle of heaven. As if heaven is somewhere up in the sky, but it's within you. So he says, waking is for those who mistake matter for reality. So that's the waking state of an ignorant person, and who has not received this wisdom yet. What they speak of even knowing about her, they need to go through the philosophy and find out these connections, like the 24 cosmic principles that the Upanishad just read out, right? Everyone has three bodies, everyone has four states of consciousness, everyone has these 5 pranas, they have these 10 senses, and so forth and so on. That's the Upanishads putting this forth as if, oh, you already know this, but here, let me tell it to you to give you a full rendering of what I'm talking about when I talk about the Pranava, that everything connects back to the Pranava. It's a little bit ironic and unfortunate that the way that we're connecting is through the prana, and then through the psychic prana, and then through the Shakti, the power. See, that's why we have to become aware of prana, the mantra, nadis, and chakras first, according to the Upanishad, right? Oh, now I know what I'm doing. I can be doing that in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep all the time and not know what I'm doing, you see. I had how many years of my life, 80, 90, 100 years of my life, and how much is, 352 days a year, or is that how much it is? 365 days a year. Thank you for reminding me of the Western wisdom. 365 days in a year times all those days, 7 days a week. That's correct, isn't it? So in that way, then, how many times did I go through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep? Times. Do your math. And I never did it once by knowing how I did it, that I did it through subtle channels, that I had a macrocosmic body. And if I opened the nadis between the macrocosmic body and the microcosmic body, then all of a sudden I went to the U of M. I went from the A of M to the U of M, right? And then when I stopped dreaming, I went from the U of M by subtler nadis and channels to the M of Om. And in that case, then all of a sudden I'm getting very close to the Turiya, to ultimate reality, to what the Upanishad just called here the most exalted spiritual state. So making sure that we all put this together as we go along here. Swapna dreaming is for those who perceive reality otherwise. So basically, otherwise means they perceive it as other than what it truly is. And you'd think that maybe deep sleep would put you closer to that, but he says sushupti, or deep sleep, is for those who do not know reality at all, because pragya will take away everything from these first two states. What was in these first two states? Shall we read it again? Devas, men, bodies, 5 elements, 5 senses, 5 organs of action, the intellect. So deep sleep takes away all of those things that were in the macrocosmic body. And in the microcosmic body, the mind stops thinking, the intellect stops vibrating, and the ego doesn't know itself. And when that ego doesn't know itself, aham kritas chapi, when the ego is taken away too, and it's done unbeknownst to us, then we go into deep sleep and we know absolutely nothing. The only thing they'll give us there is that it's a blissful nothing. So on top of that, the Upanishad says that this is the Mandukya Upanishad, which is only 12 slokas long, unlike this Upanishad we're studying now. It's a short one, but it has some 119, 121 slokas in what we're studying right now. But these 12 slokas contain so much. So he puts a more philosophical turn on everything when he says A is the quality of pervading quality, and U is the quality of being, and M is the quality of merging. So and the Upanishad is going to take that up soon, for those who are wise, whose wisdom is awakened, that is, whose Kundalini is awakened beyond the 3 worlds and is flowing through the Nadis, to the natural mantra, and through the chakras to Brahman, as dissolution, as we just called it, to those beings. And this is the case. They see that how AU and M pervade and exist and merge everything. It pervades everything, and everything merges back into it. Like I was just saying, which the Upanishad will tell us soon, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva merge back into Brahman through the word, through the AUM. There's a little further description of what the Upanishad just told us, right? Vishva, Taijasa, and Pragya were the words that we just read in Sloka 72, part 2 of 72. So Vishnu is defined as the cognizer of the external. Taijasa is the cognizer of the internal. Pragya is cognition amassed. So the quotes there are in the A, or Vishva. That's when you are in your Vishva state, aware of the macrocosm in your physical body. It resides in the right eye. It experiences the gross world by means of the mind and sense organs in the waking state. So that's how Om appears. Pretty soon the Upanishad is going to say that too. It says here, the Pranava exists in the egg state as Vishnu and as Vishva. The Pinda state as Virat. The letter U exists as Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha in the microcosmic state. The letter M exists in the causal state as Pragya. And then it goes on to say, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, goes on to say that Brahman is that endowed with the quality of Rajas, and then Vishnu with Sattva and Shiva with Tamas to create, sustain, and destroy everything, as it were. So that's a description of you in your macrocosmic body called Vishwa. So we're not talking about some being somewhere. We're talking about ourselves. The Upanishads have given us 3 bodies. And they've also said that, given them 3 names. So this one, when we're here right now in the waking state, we're Vishva. We're cognizer of the macrocosm. Look at how much there is here. I was just reading that with Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel last week. How magnificent the outer universe is. It's so intricate and infinite, he said. And then how much more so is going to be the microcosmic, which came out of it. And most people are going to have a difficulty in making that kind of inward jump, because this is so vast and so widespread out here that they can't imagine that it would come from something so small. But if it's pervaded by atoms, like if the pervading power of A is there and it's even in the atom, then they're going to see how everything large can come out of something very small, very tiny. It's the same way with these particles of intelligence. Everything comes out of them too. So going to have to make that, that's why they want you to dissolve everything back towards that microcosm. When you meditate, you aren't supposed to meditate on the body, right? If you want spiritual experience, where are you meditating? With the mind in the mind. Then when you meditate, that's the microcosm you're meditating on. When you meditate there in the microcosm, then that's going to dissolve back into Turiya via the channel of deep sleep. So all of this has been given names, and the process has been outlined for us. And so for that, it says, A is existing in the right eye. They say that about the word too, that when you hear the word, it comes from the right ear. The Upanishad says that, Holy Mother says that, those people who have heard the word, they've heard it at both sides. They say the authentic vibration that's closer to the truth is coming from the right side, the right ear. And in here, also, you see the right eye as being indicated. Number 2, Taijasa, when you go into your microcosmic state tonight, you're called the cognizer of the internal. So this is where last week and at satsang yesterday, we were talking about the internal as being designated by the act of involution. So there's evolution, evolution, things seemingly being created out of nothing, but they've actually been created out of the microcosmic, out of the thoughts of the mind. So when you go into the dissolve everything out here, you dissolve it back into the thinking process. And that's why you want to dissolve the intellect along with the ego into the Atman, into the word. And then you'll see that process happening. The process, as far as you're concerned, when you see it, it's called, I just went from dreaming into deep sleep, and I went from deep sleep into samadhi. That's what they'll see. They'll have the experience of samadhi when that happens to them consciously. All the doorways in the nadis, all the knots in the nadis will be dissolved, and their consciousness will pass through those higher nadis to higher centers. That's how Kundalini Yoga would put it. The quote there is that residing in the mind, it enjoys whole subtle realms in the dream state. And Yogachudamani Upanishad uses it a little differently. It says the U is actually there in the throat. So that's the difference between Mandukya Upanishad and the Rig Veda and the Sama Veda teachers and so forth. They'll use these in a little different way. I'll show you even a different way they use it when they talk about Hamsa. Pragya is the deep sleep state, so that's your third body. It's cognition amassed. Residing in the heart, it experiences the bliss of pragya in deep sleep. The bliss of pragya is the bliss of knowledge. The rub here is that you need to come aware of the knowledge, because that knowledge in a subtle state, like a seed, produced the forest of the dream state, which produced the worlds of the waking state. So you have to, when you're merging everything back into the causal state, you have to see the seeds there in deep sleep. That's one of the ways of explaining how everything goes, even ultra micro. You see, macro, micro, and then subtle most. There's no word for it in English. In Sanskrit, it's called ati sukshma or anuranian. Is a nice word in Sanskrit too. It's subtler than the subtlemost. So if the seeds in dream are subtle, the seeds in deep sleep are even subtler. But that's knowledge there. That's pragya. So the third state is named very fittingly, with the rub being you have to become aware of those seeds in deep sleep. Say, if you become an illumined soul and you take birth consciously, you have become aware of the seeds in deep sleep. You know which ones to water and which ones not to water. Do the seers come out of formlessness into their bodies with problems? Do the seers come out of formlessness into their bodies with anger and lust and envy and jealousy and greed? Do the seers come out of their deep sleep state or their Turiya state, their realized state, with a lot of work to do? See, of a worldly nature, a lot of desires to satisfy? No, they're aptakama. They've satisfied all those desires before. So they come out of their stage of realization in that state of pragya. See, they've seen pragya at the deepest level of their being. So they water only those seeds which are going to help them do their accomplish their lifetime of consciousness and compassion to others. They'll water only those seeds in deep sleep as they go through deep sleep into mass collective mental dreaming. This mass collective mental dreaming that's going on, which is called then Taijasa and Vishva. And here's a summation by Gaudapada. The syllable A leads to Vishva, U leads to Taijasa, M leads to Pragya. There is no course for that which has no syllabic portions. I like the way that's put. If you don't know Om in the word, it's just like meaningless. You're rambling around the worlds without accomplishing anything. And you die without remembering what you did. And you come back again without remembering what you achieved and what kind of realizations you had in your past lifetime. You don't remember your past lifetimes. It's not so much about remembering which name you gave yourself and what kind of ego you had. It's more about my past lifetime, what I realized about my Atman that I took with me and can bring back with me, like a Jivan Mukta or a Bodhisattva can. Why did they all of a sudden renounce the world so easily when others are not doing so? Because they have brought that knowledge back with them. And so for others, there's no syllabic portion for that which has no direction. So the word is the direction. It's the direction for Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, both ways, into manifestation and back out. And it's also the direction for all people who realize the M, AU and M of Om. When the adorable seer knows the three abiding qualities of these three abodes means waking, dreaming, deep sleep, AUM, that great sage enters Turiya and becomes worthy of worship. So those who have realized Om and who live in Om and who pass and merge back into Om, those are the souls that we're worshiping in the world. Since we're here, we might as well look at Gaudapada's process of meditation on the Pranava. He says, know that to comprehend Om is to attain Brahman. So you want to start looking at AUM and what it all means. That's why this Upanishad is helping us in that way. So isn't it beautiful, the Yogachudamani Upanishad paired off next to the Mandukya Upanishad? Wow, it's really like double duty going on in the Vedanta, helping us. So know that to comprehend Om is to attain Brahman. Then envision Om as the beginning, middle, and end of everything. Then contemplate it quarter by quarter. That's A, U, M, and your Atman. And then meditate on nothing else. Sort of like the Ajapa mantra, right? You don't meditate on a mantra there. You're just meditating on the life force as it courses up and down. Hum, sa, hum, sa. And it's just that pure. That's what he says here. It's clean, it's pure, it always exists, it's full of wisdom. That praga is that wisdom it's full of, by the way. And it doesn't have any drawbacks or stains. Is how they're trying to explain the pristine nature of the word. So meditate on nothing else. Then fix the mind unwaveringly on the blessed syllable Om, and then destroy all fear. So after you've taken it, understood it word, matra by matra, then you take the whole word Om. So A first, U second, M with the Turiya, and then you meditate upon the whole word. This is, of course, the great masterful Advaitin who's telling us how Upanishadically, how you take the word and meditate on it in a non-dual way. Come to know that Om as the Lord set in the heart of everyone. Then grieve no more. There's set in the throat, there's set in the heart. Come to know that Om as set in the heart of everyone and grieve no more. Become Ashokananda, my Swami that we knew lived recently. You see, Ashoka means no grief, the bliss of having no grief anymore. So that would come about by understanding Om. Know Om, the Pranava, as the lower Brahman, and the Atman is the higher Brahman. So this is why the order of things that Shankara put was, just the gross elements into the gross senses, gross elements into the subtle elements, all of those back into the mind back into the intellect back into the ego, and the ego back into Om, right? Into the word. And then find the word inside yourself, he says. That's in the Atman. So that means the Pranava, that vibrating AUM, is the lower Brahman, but the Atman is the higher Brahman, because Atman is one with Brahman, but the word still might be with Brahman only, you see. It was one with Brahman, but it was also with Brahman. I think that means that it does the creation, preservation, and destruction through the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, you see. And then they turn back into AUM and dissolve it all back into the self. And then they merge into Brahman. So that's the order of things cosmologically at a spiritual level. And Gaudapada goes on to say, perceive the Om as being devoid of both inside and outside, as unique and immutable. So Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, or the external and the internal, or what? The macrocosm and the microcosm. When you went beyond yourself as Taijasa, you went beyond your Vishva and Taijasa state. Then you found out that you were there in that pragya, in that deep sleep state. So the inside and the outside's the macrocosm, the inside's the microcosm. Naturally, you're going to go beyond both of those. Okay? So you don't stop at the mind and all it dreams about. That's stopping in heaven, as far as we're concerned. You can maybe stop there and sightsee a little, and go on. To the M of Om. Go on to the Trinity. Go on to the Word. Go on to the Atman and realize it within yourself. Finally, he says, to know Om as portionless, yet possessed of infinite portions, is what is known as realization. So we've divided Om into three. The Upanishad has done that. to help us understand outer, inner, and transcendent, or gross, subtle, and causal, right? AUM, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, macrocosm, microcosm, and what's beyond. That helps us understand the dynamics of our being. So that's why they're saying here, thus all people have three bodies. They have four states in which they experience those bodies. And they have these five forces, five pranas, and they have these names, this Vishva, Taijasa, Pragya going on. That, I hope, will act as a chart that will explain deeper for us without us having to labor the point, this beautiful sloka 72. So here is 73. The Atman, which is the form of Om, will be in all beings. But at the time of passion for worlds and objects and things, it's downward facing, or that means really, I think, outward facing. At other times, at the times of enlightenment, it would be beautiful and inward facing, upward facing. So this is what I paraphrased a little while ago at the beginning of class. And it goes on with some more teachings about that soon. Let's take 75 through 78. The letter A exists in the egg state as Vishva and Pinda state as Virat Purusha. The letter U exists as Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha in the micro state. The letter M exists as the causal state, such as Pragya. The letter A has Rajasic qualities, is red, and its form is that of Lord Brahma. The letter U has Sattvic qualities, and its form is that of the white Vishnu. The letter M has Tamasic qualities, and its form is that of the black Shiva, Rudra. Brahma took birth from Pranava. Vishnu also came out of it. Rudra also took birth from Pranava. Therefore, Pranava is the Parabrahman, the ultimate stage. Brahma merges with the letter A, Vishnu merges with the letter U, Rudra merges with the letter M. In people with wisdom, Pranava would be inward looking, and among ignorant people, Pranava would be outward, downward looking. That's 4 slokas, 75, 6, 7, and 8. You can see how packed it is with things to consider, but it's actually pretty much just a repetition of what we've already gone through. It's just they're giving you more ground, more finger holds to understand Om and how it applies to these three great beings, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwaraha, as we chant, or Jaya Shiva Omkara, Bhaja Shiva Omkara, Brahma Vishnu Sada Shiva. There they are right there in the song. You see, Hara Hara Mahadev. So Jaya Shiva Omkara. What's Omkara mean? Cause. It's the cause of everything. So it's following right along with the Upanishadic wisdom. So call it Pranava, call it Om, or if you want to speak of it in its participation in projection, creation, and with sustenance and withdrawal, call it Omkara. It's the cause of everything that's going on here, and dissolve everything back into it. That's why when you go into sleep tonight, and you might hear everything being dissolved back into your deep sleep, and you'll hear vibration coming forth again like a distant rumble, and you'll start dreaming. And then from dreaming back to awake, especially if you wake up in, say, New York City, you'll hear the rumble coming on strong in your waking state, and everything will be back again. So just like that, through these three motions, the word's always sounding itself, but it has these three levels of vibration. It has three states of consciousness. It has three mantras. It has three names, all associated with with you, the Atman. So this is putting together the Upanishad. And then it begins to wind things up a bit in Sloka 79. Pranava exists like this. It means it exists like what we just told you in 74 through 78, that it has 3 letters, 3 worlds, 3 characteristics, 3 sounds. When you are awake, the letter exists in the eyes of all beings. When you're dreaming, it exists in the neck of all beings. Deep sleep exists in the heart of all beings. So all of these things it just told you. And then it went on to say it's associated with Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, with Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva in Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So you can see how the gunas actually find their way into the whole teaching and how they come out and go back in beyond the manifestation, beyond the manifested prakriti. They go back to the unmanifested prakriti. So Pranava exists like all that. The one who knows this knows the Vedas. In the Hanahata sound form, it grows upwards in the case of wise people. So now it's beginning to make that distinction between the ignorant and those with wisdom. Those who know the Vedas, those who don't. Those who are aware of their breath, those who aren't. Those who believe in the word as being the cause of everything, Omkara, and those who know nothing about that. They think that maybe it's the physical universe just happened out of energy. Well, it was a very fine energy when you talk about spiritual energy, and it's pretty fine when you talk about mental energy too. So the macrocosm rests upon the microcosm, and both of those rest upon the void, deep sleep void. It's not void of intelligence and void of consciousness. It's void of forms and names. It's void of time and space. It's void of cause and effect. Therefore, it's void of Maya. It's only Brahman in its pure state. So Om is the way in which we come to know Brahman. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, it just ends with Om, right? And so is the involution of all the worlds. Mano, Nabudhi, Sharira, Tanmatram, Indriyam, Bhutani, nature, Bhuta Panchakam, the 5 forms of nature, all get dissolved back into it. You just have to do this consciously one day. That's why we've been teaching you for 40 years or so how to do the dissolutions of the mind as you sit. First might take you a few days to do all that. Pretty soon you're doing it in an hour. Pretty soon you're doing it in a few seconds. Just like it happens to you when you fall asleep, isn't it? Does it take a long time to fall asleep? Not most of the time. So it's like that you shut on and turn off consciousness. That's your awareness of consciousness. But you have to become aware of awareness to do that and participate in it with this eye open, hopefully. So if you have the wisdom that Om Kara, Om is the cause of all this, then you're going to want to find your way to Om. So for the one who knows this, knows the Vedas, in the Anahata sound form, it grows upwards in the case of wise people. So from the heart upwards, to the Vishuddha chakra, to the Agya chakra, as Sri Krishna talked about, to the Sahasrara chakra, in wise souls and illumined souls and realized souls like that, Om is appearing at deeper and higher levels to shed its light upon everything that's below it or outside, apparently outside of it. Directions are hard to apply to it. So here's then it starts to go into its usual Upanishadic poetic fashion. It says, the sound pranava is continuous like the flow of oil, like the long sound of a bell. Its peak is Brahman. So that's why if you dissolve everything back into the Om, then everything is going to be, like Sri Krishna said, walking over sand dunes to get to the ocean and then jumping in the ocean. Or like last week's God blog said, you can find the ocean, but make sure take a few drops of it into your mouth and make sure that you get that nectar of immortality inside of you, not just see it and go away or be afraid of it or something. That's your true nature. That's the Lord, which is closest to you. And it's signified best by the sound of Om. Like it says here, the sound Pranava is like the flow of oil continually and the peal of a bell. Or by light. That's Param Jyoti over here. See? That's, some people see that light. Some people hear that sound. Some people do both. So that's 80. 81 says that peak, to continue on, Om's peak is Brahman. That peak is so brilliantly lit that it cannot be described by words. The great rishis found it out using their sharpened intellect. The one who knows that is considered as the one who knows the Vedas. So they sharpened their intellects. Why I pulled out that sloka from the Upanishad and had you memorize it. Te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan, devatma shaktim sagunayar nagudam, yaha karanani nikilani tani, kalatma yuktanya hadidishtat yekaha. It's one. So that's why through Te dhyan yoga, through meditation yoga, they sharpened their intellects, and then they saw her. And they understood everything that the Vedas were talking about when they talked about Brahman and Maya, or Shiva and Shakti. Everything they became aware of it all in realization, and that enlightened them fully. So a beautiful sloka 81. That peak is so brilliantly lit that it cannot be described by words or seen by these eyes. The savants found it out by sharpening their intellects. So as you dissolve the elements back to senses and the senses back into the mind back into the intellect, that intellect gets sharpened by doing that. It's like, I'm not that. I'm not those. I'm not that set of fives. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not this. Here I am at the intellect. I see that it's limited. I have to expand it. Apiyantu mamangani vak pranas chakshuhu shrotamatra bhamendriyani cha sarvani. I have to expand it, everything, in order to know Brahman. And then we go into 82. It talks about the Hamsa. And I showed this quickly last week, but this is coming from the Nada Bindu Upanishad. So now we're taking Yogachudamani Upanishad, casting its light, contrasting in a beautiful way against the light of the Mandukya Upanishad. And now we're going to look a little bit at what the Nada Bindu Upanishad says. So here's what Yogachudamani Upanishad says that the rishis of this Upanishad had fleshed out earlier. The Hamsa mantra shines in the middle of the two eyes. Hum, sa. So hum, well, they're going to say this, so I won't ruin it here, but the letter sa is known as Kechari, which means that it travels through the skies. It has been decided that it is the word for Twam in Tat Twam Asi. So you are that one who's traveling through the skies with your in-breath. I want to see more. I want to have more. I want to breathe it all in. I want to experience it. Sa. So this Upanishad is connecting that up with one of the great Mahavakyas, Tatvamasi. So again, the Hamsa mantra shines in the middle of the two eyes. They've just talked about the Anahata here at the heart, hearing Om. Now they're talking about this traveler using the Kechari it's a certain kind of breathing that you can use too to awaken yourself. It has been declared that the word Twam, which means you, that thou art means thou. In the famous Vedic saying, Tat Twamasi, is that word, Sa. It has been decided the letter Ha in Hamsa, which is the Lord of all the universe, is the word for Tat, that. So that thou art. Sa is thou. Ha is that. See? That thou art. So Ham Sa. You're always breathing this in and out in the Ajapa mantras. We have to meditate on that letter Sa as the soul traveling between birth and death, and on Ha as the stable God. So that breath, there's a kumbhaka, right, in between it. It's the whole point of breathing is kumbhaka. Nothing happens. No breathing in, no breathing out. It ended everything. Just like waking, dreaming ended in deep sleep. And that even ended in Turiya. See? So that apparent nothingness, that which is not the void, and because you should avoid the void, as I like to say, but which is full and pregnant with pure conscious awareness, which is all pervasive, is that stable God upon which you'll meditate after you understand that thou art. The combination of the Lord and yourself. That is yourself as it travels the skies. See? Sa. It is the soul traveling between birth and death. So it's traveling on all these realms. These 7 chakras are all realms. They're also called the 7 worlds. The soul is doing that all the time. So you can see how it's bringing it all back really pretty much to these nadis and prana and the suspension of everything in deep sleep, the suspension of everything at death before birth, the extension and the cessation of everything at pralaya and mahapralaya, and the cessation of breathing in the held breath, kumbhaka. It's bringing it all back to, you're now have departed the macrocosm and you're now moving through the nadis and the microcosm, which is in the mind of God. And then that also contains these heavens and in the microcosm, right? As it just said. But now you're going to go beyond heaven, earth, and hell. And you're going into the anahata sound, which originates right there at the conjunction of the 3rd and 4th chakra, 3rd and 4th lotuses, Manipuri and anahata. And then, as it said, looking friendly, looking inward, the Om shines with its face looking up, and you're going to then penetrate through all of those nadis in the Sushumna to the uppermost state of consciousness, which it just told us is the exalted spiritual state called Turiya. And I'm trying to keep us all of this concentrated as we look at these teachings that end this Upanishad. So Ham Sa is where we've come to now. So remember, that's going to be connected to thou and that. Sa is you traveling, the bird flying out of its nest and going places. And Ha is the stable God which you're coming back to all the time. Like Sri Ramakrishna liked that saying. One of his devotees once told him, the soul's like a bird flying high, but it has to come back to its nest. So to Sri Ramakrishna, coming back to its nest was not coming back to the world. It was coming back to God. It travels, but you don't need to travel if you know Brahman. Everything's already in Brahman. Everything that you travel to see is in Brahman. You just have to realize that you yourself are in Brahman, and everything that you travel to see is within you. And then you don't go anywhere. And then you don't breathe. So people wrote me last week and said, what do you mean that rishis don't breathe? They don't breathe in ignorance, I told them. They gave up their last breath in ignorance. They gave up worldliness. Now they breathe in Brahman only, and that's called kumbhaka. That's the end of all dreams, of all movements, of all travel through the chakras and so forth, through the sojourn to all the worlds. That ends all of that. So there has to be a space or a place or a soul or a reality that's like that. Like creating Mother Durga from the elements of the earth and then dissolving her back into the river. She wasn't there before, then she was, now she's not anymore. But she's always there. And those actions are just expressing. Everything is here in this wisdom. And here's where the Upanishad then all of a sudden enters into its cautionary teachings. The living being is tied by his or her organs, sense organs. But the Paramatman is not tied to anything. The living being is egocentric, egoistic, but the soul is not tied to the ego at all. It's always independent. So it's like Upanishad saying there are two kinds of beings or two kinds of mind. One's free and one's bound. So you, as I was saying earlier, you want to come back to this incarnation in your next birth or in this birth with that knowledge that you drew out of the M of Om, that when you left the worlds, when you gave up this sojourn, returned to Brahman, and then decided to come back and take another birth. All of this has to be recovered and held on to with retentive memory. So Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Chaitaneti Abhidiyate Namastasyai 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 Namamo Nidra Rupena Samstita Jnana Rutena Samstita. So you have to retain your knowledge. And you can do it by knowing her, because all knowledge is within her. The ethereal light which is Om, is that Atma, in whose aspects stand the three worlds Bhur, Bhuva, and Suva. They are also the place where the three gods, moon, sun, and fire reside. Those are also indicative of the Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala nerves in Kundalini. Because Om is the ethereal light, it has to be pronounced by words, practiced by the body, and meditated on by the mind. So you see how, if they want to encourage you to practice, so use this body to do sadhana, and meditate, use this mind to meditate on reality. And then with the power that's animating you, this prana, do that selfless work that you have to do by being in the body. Nobody can remain inactive, Sri Krishna says in the Gita. So, you have to be active. So it's just a matter of how you act and what way you act and for whom. Like we were talking about Swami Vivekananda saying, I don't remember any act that I ever did for myself. I did everything for others. Holy Mother also said that. So you think, oh, that's just, how can that even be possible? Well, if they don't breathe in ignorance, then they're not going to act in ignorance either. So they're living light. They live in the Om. That's why it says, the ethereal light is Om. They live in it. It has aspects, but they live in the light of Om, not in the worlds Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. So when they come to Bhur, like Swami Vivekananda took on a birth here, he's actually staying in Brahman and coming in Om, but his body appears before us in those three bodies way that we talked about. If he has Om, he also has these three bodies and these three names like everyone else. This consciousness is beyond them. So he's telling us about Om, then it's like Om is light, but it can't be understood, so it has to be pronounced by words. And it has to be practiced by the body, and it has to be meditated on by the mind, right? So this is the teaching in this Upanishad. After he has told us already that human beings are tied to their body and sense organs, the Paramatman isn't. Human beings are tied to their limited egos. The Paramatma is tied to nothing, see. So they live in that Paramatman. Other beings who are not so wise don't live in the worlds, live in the body, live for the senses, live for the objects. So you call discrimination between the real and the unreal shoots through and through every Upanishad I ever read. They're always making this one very simple distinction. And I don't see how people could get confused anymore if they read an Upanishad, study it with a teacher, and cannot see that they need to renounce the world and accept Brahman. Then they can live in any world they want and be in that Brahman. So Om is what's making us aware of this ability to be two places at once when you're not anywhere at all. You want to put it that way. The one who goes on chanting Om, the Pranava, whether clean or unclean, will not be attached to all the transgressions. So again, if they don't breathe in the world and they don't think in the world, then they also don't act in the world. So their actions are also good and bad, but they're not doing them in the world, so they don't stain them. Like a lotus is never stained by water, it says. And another way it says in here is that, well, there's in the forest, things get hot and things get cold, right? Hot in the daytime, cold at night. But the log doesn't experience that. A log doesn't experience the hot and cold in the forest. Just like that, they don't experience the sins of the world or the good of the world, nor do they experience any duality, because they're always poised in that one Atman. And they're keeping themselves poised in it by knowing that Om is the cause of everything. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva do the same thing. So similar to the lotus leaf, which never gets wet, that one who goes on chanting Om is not attached to any of the actions that are done by the body. They make sure to say that after saying work and desire and wisdom are important. Work is the power of Brahma, desire is the power of Shiva, wisdom is the power of Vishnu. So that's how they're describing this one who goes on pronouncing A, U, and M. All right, so now we're missing about 12 slokas that are lost in time. But then we move on to these final slokas. 103 says, 12 repetitions of Om is called a Puraka, followed by 16 repetitions of Om, which is called a Kumbhaka, and then 10 repetitions of Om, which is called a Rechaka, and that's called pranayam. So breathe in 10, you can count it on your fingers if you want, because you have 10 digits there in the way you recite, and then 16 held, and then 10 out breath. So 10 in breath, Puraka, 16 held. So they want you to expand that breathless state, and then breathe out 10 repetitions of Om. So this is how they're telling you to do an Upanishadic or Vedic pranayam. The basic rule for chanting it is at least 12 times and is termed as poor. Twice that amount, 24, is termed medium. Thrice that is called uttama, the best. So you expand it over time. Pretty soon, then you're breathing in twice that much, holding twice that much, breathing out twice that much. And that's an extended pranayam. How will you know it? At the lowest level, there will be some sweating of the body. In the medium, there will be some trembling. At the highest, there will be attainment of the objective. After that, it's called control of the breath. You've mastered a breath when you've mastered that pranayam. And it will, just like thinking good habits, become ingrained in you and you just do them automatically. By mastering the breathing process like that, you'll be in kumbhaka all the time. You won't even notice anymore your breath. It'll be even throughout. The yogi should first salute the Guru, then Lord Shiva, then sit in asana, concentrate sight down the bridge of the nose to the heart, and practice pranayam alone. By that one posture, he avoids diseases. By pranayam, he avoids transgressions. And by pratyahara, controls his mental activity. I'm going to jump ahead here. Pratyahara is the state where sensory organs, like the eye, do not concern themselves with things outside, but turn themselves inwards. So that's there's a bunch of slokas in between this description of pranayam and pratyahara, which you know is the fourth and fifth limbs of yoga. So if you accomplish mastery of the breath, then pretty soon the senses will become indrawn, and they won't anymore go out and settle on the objects and stay there attached to them. There'll be natural detachment from objects going on. In the remaining few minutes, we can finish it up. That was 109. Sloka 110. By beliefs, the mind becomes strong, and samadhi gives the being wonderful knowledge, and one attains salvation after destroying all transgressions and doing holy actions. After seeing the Param Jyoti, that's the last of this arc on her chudamani, after seeing the Param Jyoti, the supreme light, that means one sees it spread everywhere. So that's like seeing Brahman everywhere. Everything is emitting a light that's that's there whether the eyes are open or closed. After seeing that supreme light, Param Jyoti, in samadhi, duties and action neither come nor go. Well, I already explained that. One's not doing them. This is like riding on the air. Nothing happens. Or it's like a log in the woods. It's cold out, it's hot. No, the log doesn't feel it. One becomes that detached from all processes, all experiences, and stays in that stable state, which is it's Brahman itself, which is that with a capital T. So I'll repeat it again. Pratyahara is the state where sensory organs like the eye do not concern themselves with things outside, but turn themselves inwards. All the senses will then turn inward. Similar to the sun taking its rays inwards at the period of dusk, the yogi who is in this stage controls the mind completely. Here ends the Yogachudamani Upanishad, included in the wisdom of the Sama Veda. And it ends with this chant. Mapayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu shrotramatra balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishad mahabrahma nirakurya mama brahma nirakarada nirakadanam nirakadanam meyastu tadatmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste mahishantu te mahishantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om, Hari Om. Om